Welcome to Stellar Strategy Gaming. This is Mara and Ben, and today we're going to be talking about Tabaxi. If you enjoy what we do, please consider leaving us a like and subscribing. For those who are unfamiliar, Tabaxi are the race of cat people. They have some neat abilities. Their reflexes allow them to move with a burst of speed. When you move on your turn in combat, you can double your speed until the end of the turn. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you move 0 feet on one of your turn. They also have a natural weapon, which is cat's claws. It gives them a climbing speed of 20 feet, and their claws can hit as unarmed strikes for 1d4 plus strength modifier of slashing damage rather than bludgeoning damage. Now, they do have some curiosities both individually and with their overall culture. Tabaxi obsessions, they can be focused on a planar entity, a monster, a lost civilization, or pretty much anything you want them to be, although that can create some complications with roleplay.
Oh, yes, most certainly. And the fact that the book actually specifies that they tend to flip from curiosity to curiosity rapidly is especially dangerous because just having a general curiosity towards something isn't that bad, and it could be a great way to get your character into the plot. If your character has an obsession with cheese, and the villain is doing something, which means that there will be less cheese in the entirety of the world, that's a great way to get your Tabaxi into the plot, and it's very funny. The issue comes that, sure, your character may have joined for the cheese, but suddenly they're interested in fencing, and the villain is not doing anything involving fencing, so suddenly your character's on a random side quest approximately 30 miles away from the rest of the party due to that ridiculous movement speed.
And splitting up the party is always a spectacular idea. Additionally, political sensitivity is an issue these days. Some of the Tabaxi quirks that are on their D10 quirk table in Volo's Guide to Monsters include, when talking about something you're obsessed with, you speak quickly and never pause and others can't understand you. You're a font of random trivia from the lore and stories you have discovered. Those sound very much like traits of people on the autism spectrum. I want to be really clear here. I'm on the autism spectrum myself. I do not in any way believe that wizards did this to be demeaning or degrading of people. It's just something where if you role play it wrong, then it could come off that way. So just have a little bit of awareness of who's at the table, what their sensitivities are, and what you're doing. Now, the way the Tabaxi culture is described is they sometimes travel alone. They also sometimes travel as tinkers and minstrels in caravans. And they'll set up and do entertainment and things like that and tell stories and get stories from the locals where they're going and trade for items of interest and sometimes steal. This is very clearly and explicitly a reference to the Romani culture of Europe.
Yes.
So if you're not a Romani yourself, there again, it's fine. You can do it. Just be a little bit respectful of the people whose cultures this may have been taken from.
Yes. Now, the other thing is that they can be pretty OP, especially when you do certain things with their movement speed, which is why they are best as rogues and monks, especially with that dexterity score increase as well, just really tying it all together. I've talked a little bit about how I don't like building classes or races for purpose in D&D. I like that general vagueness where you can really multi-purpose them, but the Tabaxi very clearly are built for these classes. And I did a little bit of math here, and assuming that you are at level 4, which is a reasonable assumption, I'd say, and you correctly multi-classed between monk and rogue as a Tabaxi character, and you use their movement speed ability, and you use the rogue's double dash, and you dashed. The top speed for a Tabaxi of level 4 is approximately 320 movement speed. And I might be slightly wrong on that math. I think it might actually be higher than that. It's definitely not lower. So I'm counting the mobile feat. That is why it does have to be at level 4.
So let's break that down a little bit. If memory serves, monks get the 40 feet of movement speed, or they get an additional 10, which for a Tabaxi works out to 40 feet of movement speed. With the feline agility, the way it reads is that it doubles your speed until the end of the turn. So it's not an extra 30 or 40 feet of movement. It's just however much movement you have gets doubled. So 40 feet plus your rogue's dash action. Oh, I'm sorry. Mara's waving at me. If you've taken the mobile feat, you're at 50 feet for base. So you dash for now 100 feet in one turn. If you dash again, that gives you... No, yes. Yeah, I'm getting confused, but the math, it works out to a lot.
Yes, I did do the miles per hour, which is easier to remember than all these little things. But at level 4, the miles per hour works out to something like 40 miles per hour, which is completely ridiculous.
Also, this is assuming you don't multi-class into fighter, so you get action surge, which allows you to take another action that turn, which would allow you to dash a third time for the turn, or take any of the spells like haste that increase movement speed, you min-maxing psychopath. All that funny goodness aside, I would like to point out that Mara's absolutely right. These make excellent. They get +2 to Dex, +1 to Charisma, which is that along with their movement abilities, make very good rogues. They make very good monks, and they also work well for many other things. A Tabaxi Bard is, with the Charisma bonus, is excellent. The Dex can beef either their combat ability or their, as well as their AC. Also, if you want to play Bard is very hard to play as a mobile class, as a melee class. In our video on Bards and Rangers, somebody on Reddit did comment that Bards shouldn't be melee. They had some good points. The Tabaxi's movement ability would allow you to move either in or out of combat as you prefer, much more quickly, and make it harder for your enemies to catch up with you when you don't want to be caught. So they would definitely make sense as either College of Whispers or Valor Bard for that reason. There are also builds for Tabaxi Paladins that are quite popular. You do a Dex-based Paladin, a Fighter.
For the record, we do not endorse anyone to play any kind of Paladin, ever, under any circumstances. I know we just released an Oathbreaker video, but I don't care. I still denounce Paladins as a class. You can go see our video on Paladins, on both videos on Paladins in the description below.
One thing that Tabaxi would work well for with their claws ability is I've always liked the idea of somebody who was sort of a thug, maybe a fighter or a rogue class, where they just grew up on the street, so they would have some of the kinds of stealth abilities and so forth that would come with that. But I never really saw the build that would work for it. Tabaxi do get proficiency in stealth as part of their package. And with their claws ability, I kind of don't like the fact that it's strength-based and not dex-based. I know why Wizards did it, because the class would have been too OP otherwise. It's OP anyway. The race would have been too OP otherwise. It's OP anyway.
And if you take Monk, it doesn't matter.
That's true. But with this fighter class, if you were going heavy with the strength, then the claws make more sense, and it would be a great scenario for situations where you have to hand in your weapons before you get in to go in somewhere. So really, there's a tremendous variation. There's very few things that wouldn't make sense to play as a Tabaxi. They don't get any boosts that would be specifically helpful to a wizard or to a cleric.
But they're not as bad as kobolds, which get a specific negative to something. I think it's strength or something like that. So they don't have that disadvantage either.
Most things in life aren't as bad as kobolds, so... Now, the book does mention that they tend toward chaotic alignments, but they're not inherently evil. Anybody who's been around cats knows that they can count as minor ecological disasters all on their own. The way cats interact with people tends to be interesting, and if you want to RP that out, have fun with it. Cats don't feel like they need us, but they do like to be around us. One idea I did have that you could do on a campaign, it would require some coordination with the DM, of course, but if your party is traveling somewhere and all of a sudden dead gnomes and halflings and goblins and just anything else keep turning up outside of the camp, and then at some point along the line, it turns out that this has been your Tabaxi sneaking off at night, hunting and bringing back prey for the party the way cats bring back mice.
Oh my god.
I might have neglected to tell Mara I was going to mention this idea. If you want to do an evil PC idea with the Tabaxi, and possibly a very complex evil PC who's very loving to some people but also a psychopath to others.
Oh yes, that would be amazing. In fact, I would say that Tabaxi actually work really well as villains in general, partially because of exactly what Ben here just listed, but also this innate curiosity. Like, that sounds amazing for a Lich character. You know, if you've got a character who one of their main goals is Pact of the Undying Warlock or something like that, you know, it's a bit more obscure for a Tabaxi character, admittedly, but still, like, that's kind of what drives a Lich, is this hunger for intelligence and hunger for knowledge. And so if your character is devoted to that to the utmost due to this incessant curiosity, hell, that could even be a plot line, is your paladin is a Tabaxi, and they become curious with the history of the Nine Hells and get corrupted and become an Oathbreaker, and they have to figure out a way to manage their curiosity so they can go back on the holy path. Like, you can do so many interesting plot lines with this.
Yes, and Tabaxi do make very good warlocks. The dex bonus along with the charisma buff is great for that, and as with the bard, the movement allows you to have some control over what range they operate at. One way to make Eldritch Blast even more obnoxious than it already was is giving yourself extra movement, so it's harder for anything to engage in melee with you.
Yes, I believe the maximum range of Eldritch Blast, if you take the Eldritch Invocation, is 300 feet, and then you can do the movement speed thing. So you could be fighting a Quickling, and it would not be able to catch up with you in one turn. Consider that.
One thing that does bear mentioning, I have mixed feelings about it, but the Tabaxi's movement ability, to use it again after you've used it, you have to not move at all for one round. So you are stuck flat-footed if you want to recharge it, but you do still have regular movement in that round, and continue to have regular movement until you have a time when you're not moving. So this isn't like a once between long rests type ability. This is definitely something you can use potentially every other turn. I do kind of like the idea, and I know this is goofy as heck, but I do kind of like the idea of having a party with like an elderly druid, and the Tabaxi is sort of her companion, and like your whole quest is them solving a murder in their small village or something. I mean, it's the kind of class you can be as serious or as goofy with it as you would like. We thank you so much for listening and watching, and if you've made it this far, please do hit that like button, subscribe. We are looking forward to releasing more videos. We release at least once a week.
Yes, and next week we will be covering elves, why there are way too many of them. And again, thank you all.